Hello! Okay, this is going to be my thoughts on the concept known as privilege, quote unquote. Now, what the heck is privilege? Privilege, quote unquote, is the, how should I say this? It's the belief that is prominent among our friends on the, our friends in the cities, the left, our social justice warrior, genital mutilating friends, that certain people or groups in society have certain unfair advantages as a result of being born into a particular group or family. And that these privileges need to be, well, taken away from them. So I'm gonna kind of debunk this idea of privilege, but I'm also gonna give my thoughts on it too. First of all, oh, and one more thing that I forgot to mention. One of the arguments, and this is going to come in hand, this is going to be relevant later in this video. One of the arguments that is often made by the proponents of the idea that privilege, quote unquote, exists is that a certain group of people known as whites profited by enslaving and colonizing non-European peoples, and the descendants of the rich people who profited from the slavery and colonization are privileged because they have unearned wealth because their ancestors were slave owners or people who were instrumental in colonization. Now I'm going to give my thoughts on this later, but first I want to debunk the concept of privilege. One of the main themes of the main groups of people that the proponents of the idea of privilege claim are quote-unquote privileged are white people and men. They claim that white people unfairly benefit from racism and men unfairly benefit from sexism as a group. The problem with this argument is that, one, from an economic perspective, it doesn't make sense because there are other groups of people that have higher average incomes than whites, such as Asians and such as Nigerians, and, well, another certain tribe that I'm not going to get into. If this system of privilege was inherently racist towards minorities, then you would expect white people to be the higher average earners of income, but it's actually Asians and another tribe. So it doesn't make sense from an economic perspective to think white privilege specifically is a real thing. But there's also another problem with this, which is that why are there so many poor white people if white privilege exists? Why are there so many poor white people in West Virginia, for example, or the Deep South? Or, say, rural Pennsylvania, for example? If white privilege existed, then you would think those people would not be poor, but they are. So, the idea that white privilege is a thing is just not true. Now, as for male privilege, first of all, there's really no evidence that there's a systemic problem of discrimination based on sex within society. Oh, and I know that there's going to be someone in the comments section going, oh, but what about the wage gap? There's no evidence of a unfair wage gap. To the extent that there is a wage gap, there are two main reasons why there is a wage gap between men and women, and both of those reasons are not due to things that are unfair. The first reason is that men work more than women. Women naturally want to stay at home when they have kids and are more likely to want to become housewives. But the second reason is, of course, women don't really ask for more money. They're less likely to ask for a raise, which is not a product of sexism, it's a product of the choices of women. So, privilege is bullshit. Now, I'm going to come back to what I said before about the descendants of white slave owners who benefit from slavery and colonization, because I want to make this point. Imagine this hypothetical scenario. You have 5 different families that each start out poor in, let's say, a neighborhood. You have a neighborhood, you have 5 different families, each of these families are equally poor, exactly equally poor. We'll call these families family 1, family 2, family 3, family 4, and family X. Now, let's say hypothetically that the first 4 families remain poor, but the father of family X, the dad in family X, decides, you know what, I'm gonna rob a bank in order to get wealthy. So let's say hypothetically that the father in family X robs a bank. He gets away with it. He successfully breaks into the bank at night, gets through all of the alarm systems, takes the money, gets away with it, leaves no forensic evidence whatsoever. So he robs a bank, then he robs other banks, and becomes a successful bank robber and never gets caught, and always gets away with it. Now let's say hypothetically that family X becomes rich because of the father's bank robbing career. And let's say that the father in family X passes down the wealth to the kids. The kids and let's say hypothetically that the kids of the father in family X take that money and invest it in legitimate businesses, and then make even more money. And then the kids of the father, the original bank robber, end up passing down their wealth and getting more wealthy through legitimate business over the course of 5 generations. Now let's say after these 5 generations, the first 4 families are still poor, but family X is now rich because family X is descendant from, has a family lineage that comes from a father who did unethical things in order to make money. In this hypothetical scenario, should we take away family X's wealth and give it to the first 4 families simply because family X happens to be the descendant of a bank robber? No. Because the descendants of the bank robber never did anything wrong. They never actually committed a crime. They just happened to be the descendant of someone who did commit a crime, or crimes. It wouldn't be fair or right morally to take away wealth from Family X, because the descendants of Family X did not do anything to deserve their wealth or their quote-unquote privilege taken away from them. And so it's the same thing with the descendants of slave owners who are wealthy because their families in the past owned slaves. Yes, slavery is a bad thing. It's an immoral thing that should never have happened and should never be repeated. But that doesn't make it a good thing to take away people's wealth because their ancestors got that wealth through nefarious means. So this is of course my problem with privilege, the idea of privilege. There's no evidence for it, very little evidence for it, and to the degree that there is privilege, there's more evidence for certain minorities being privileged or benefiting from affirmative action and being privileged as a result of that than there is for white men being privileged. And even if privilege were to exist, it would still be immoral for us to take away the privilege of white men for the reasons that I just outlined. Now, I know this is going to be offensive to the crazy SJW, but suck it up or don't watch this video. Or try to debate me in the comments section and convince me that I'm wrong. In fact, I want you to do that. I want you to engage with my ideas rather than getting triggered. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video or agreed with anything that I said, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. This is Wolf signing out.